Hello, welcome back to FPL IQ. I'm FPL Rob, and today I'm joined once again by teacher FPL Lucian. We're going to be looking today at Fulham. Some possible changes coming in with starman Mitrovic linked to Saudi Arabia. However, we're going to look at the players that they've got right now. We're going to be looking at predicted lineups, play styles, strengths and weaknesses, and players to potentially pick and avoid from the Cottagers. Lucian, how are you feeling about looking at this Fulham side today?
I feel fat as I've just come back from holiday. But still, looking at Fulham, they look rather attractive, much more than me. And I suppose we should finally rate them seriously, as they have come up with a lot of good stuff, from their goalkeepers all the way down to their attacking front four. And the more we talk about it, especially since Mana Solomon as well as certain other attackers are in different clubs now, we should really put Fulham under the spotlight. Let's go.
So we'll start with the predicted lineups, and I mentioned as well that Mitrovic could be on his way out, but as it stands, he is still part of the side. And interestingly, looking at the AI algorithm, the predicted points, Fantasy Football Scout has Mitrovic quite high. He's actually just below Mbuemo of Brentford, someone who we were really attracted to in the Brentford team guide video. But you look at the top player over the first 6 weeks. Haaland is obviously predicted to be the most, and it's Salah, De Bruyne, Kane, Rashford, and so on. And it just sort of sticks out. There's Mbuemo at Fulham and Mitrovic. Mbuemo at Brentford and Mitrovic at Fulham. He could be a popular pick. People thought 7.5 million was a little bit too much. But let's start at the back. 4-2-3-1. Leno in goal. Tete, Tosin, Ream, and Robinson. Pretty stable back line. Personally, I'm not a big fan of their defense. I think they leak a lot of goals. But in terms of price, you can get anyone in the back line and the goalkeeper all for 4.5 million. Going into midfield, you've got Reed and Palhinha as those two defensive midfielders. Palhinha is another player linked to possibly West Ham, who are after, of course, replacing Declan Rice, who's now Arsenal. Playing just in front of them is the former 4.5 million hero from last year, Pereira, who is now up to 5.5 million, but still arguably worth that price tag. And then we go up front. You've got Wilson on one wing, Willian, who should be staying. It looks like he's going to re-sign there again at Fulham on the other wing, with starman Mitrovic 7.5 million up front. So how are you feeling about this Fulham starting 11?
I think Bobby Da Cordova Reed he at least deserves a mention, but for being the ultimate utility player. Sometimes he played left wing, but from his default right wing position, he had shifted to right back so many times that really he deserves a lot of plaudits for Fulham's progress under Marco Silva this season. I think in that sense, the right wing is really the biggest question mark, because as much as they can fill Harry Wilson, is it?
Yes.
I think the dynamics changes a lot, and it affects the width that Fulham have up front, because we don't know if they're going to play a wide formation or will they employ a narrow 4-2-3-1 where they push Reed really high up. There were stages of the season where Reed was unavailable, and there were stages where Palhinha was unavailable and they were terrible. The real question is, can they come up with somebody in case somebody from their starting 11 gets injured? Because, well, as evident last season, losing Mitrovic was a huge blow to them. And yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, so we'll go through some of the strengths and weaknesses of the side. So as you said, De Cordova Reed, I completely agree. Utility man. He did start 29 games. I did go for Wilson in the front line here. I feel as though he's more likely to start the season. But going on to the strengths, their prices and the quality that you're getting is mid-table for everything. So I said earlier, the entire defense and the goalkeeper you can pick up for 4.5 million. There's no midfielder more expensive than Andreas at 5.5 million. Granted, he's the attacking midfielder. You're not really going to go for the CDMs. But then you go for the wingers as well. Wilson is 5.5 million. De Cordova Reed is 5.5 million. Willian he's not in it at the moment, but he's probably going to come in at 5.5 million as well. And then Mitrovic is the standout one there at 7.5 million. So in terms of a strength for them, you're kind of getting a team that is mid-table but well priced. Defensively, shots conceded, clean sheets, goals conceded, all mid-table. all middle of the road. Attacking wise, they're also mid-table for goals, shots, and attempts on the box. And another strength for them is the key FPL players are your nailed guys. If you want one of the wing backs, or you want the attacking midfielder, or you want the key striker, they are without a shadow of a doubt going to be the starting one. Even if you wanted to go for someone Polinia who has sort of mini hot streaks, nailed. Pereira, nailed. Mitrovic, nailed. So that you know exactly what you're getting. Leno, goalkeeper, good for saves, one of the better scoring keepers last season, nailed. And of course as well, looking at the fixture ticker, Fulham sticking to their mid-table rhetoric here, they're also sort of mid-table on the Fantasy Football Scout fixture ticker for the first 8 games. I always say I look at the first 8 games because I'm likely to wildcard within those first 8. But here's the thing. In those 8 games, I think the reason why they're dragged down the fixture ticker is because they've got Arsenal away in game week 3 and Man City away in game week 4. So because they're like the 2 most difficult games you can get, away to Arsenal, away to City, that's pulled them down the fixture ticker. Because if you look at the other fixtures, they've got Everton, Brentford, Luton, Palace, Chelsea, and Sheffield United. So again, you could put Chelsea into that difficult fixture with Arsenal and Man City, but less so. So that means that 5 out of these 8 games, 2 of them are against newly promoted sides at home. So the strengths would lie in the fact that they're incredibly cheap for a mid. You can spend the same amount of money for this Fulham side as you would for a newly promoted team. So you would just go for a mid-table, a sort of established or going to be established Premier League side. And the fact that the fixtures, in my opinion, are one of the best. They just drag down the fixture ticker because Arsenal away and Man City away are in there. Any strengths that you like to find about this Fulham side?
I'd like to reiterate your point in the sense that even though they have put up mid-table figures, I do believe that their strengths, I would like to make that same point from a completely different perspective. It's that they are still treated as a promoted team, but somehow, some way, they are overperforming. The only reason Fulham players looked attractive in the first place, because we knew straight away that Mitrovic, 6 million, yes, no, talisman, sure, but will he continue to defy expectations? Because Mitrovic, even last season when he was promoted with Fulham, he wasn't an unknown quantity. We knew exactly what to get out of Mitrovic, and so long as he's on penalties and so long he's on form, yeah, we pick him 9 times out of 10. The whole attraction with Andres Pereira and Bernd Leno, for that matter, was that they just overperformed in their positions. Pereira, as the number 10, took free kicks. He got a couple of assists off corners, and Bernd Leno is one of the biggest big savers of the game, as I've mentioned in our first draft video. You want that. You want a set of players that overperform when it matters, especially when the games get tough. And that's why the likes of being away to Arsenal and being away to Man City, you can at least expect like 3 points out of that. And, at least compared to the likes of, I don't know, Raya or Sanchez, who would have the tendency to concede like 4 to 5 goals without saying much. The other thing that I would like to preach about Fulham, at least compared to other sides that potentially suffer from second season syndrome, such as Bournemouth, which we've talked about, is that Fulham have retained their starting 11, and that means that they've retained the same strategy in terms of their route to goal. The thing about Fulham is that the beautiful thing about Fulham is that specifically only 3 players perform. Pereira, Mitrovic, Leno, nobody else. Even though Robinson looks super attacking, Ream, Kenny Tete, Palinia, Reed, you mentioned that they had mini streaks, but no one has ever picked them up. No one will ever consider those players seriously. And it's because we know that we just look at the front 3, we look at the top 3, and just ignore everyone else. The question is, will they evolve? Will their supporting cast shine? Because last season, when Mitrovic got injured, they tried Carlos Vinicius. That was an experiment that failed horribly. And then they had Mano Solomon from the left wing that really picked up the pace. And in the end, they experimented with Wilson, right, at the number 9 on the right flank, and that didn't turn out too well. That's the thing about Fulham. can they develop a supporting cast that will utilize the same strategy? Because we know that everyone else will have the same strengths, the same weaknesses, and therefore the same predictability in FPL, and that is what we want.
Just to tack on to some points there. So Leno making saves, he was second, and Raya was top, way top with 154. Leno was way second with 144, and then there 20 saves in front of third place Pickford. So if you're looking for saves, I've even said it, I thought that the Pickford Leno rotation option is pretty nice for the start of the season. And in terms of those star players, so Mitrovic with the injuries and the red cards, he only actually started 23 games but still picks up 14 goals and 2 assists. So he kept having a bit of an injury, and of course the red card situation where was it 8 games I think he was banned for after the issue with Manchester United and the referee. Exactly right, I think. But if Mitrovic does go, would you be attracted potentially, even as a sub, if you pay 0.5 million more, for a 5 million Vinicius? Because he's only 5 million, and Mitrovic is actively saying he wants to go to Saudi Arabia. They have put in a couple of bids that have been rejected already. Would that, I mean, I've already said, I've got 2 million in the bank. I would massively be persuaded to go 4.5 million to 5 million Vinicius if that is the case.
That would require me to work out a rotation. I've looked at the 5 million bracket market again, and there are quite a lot of decent picks in there. You've got Enzo Fernandez, Ouattara, and now this. It's there for the taking. The question comes down to whether you're brave enough to have a starting sub, because I do feel that when we talk about Man City later, we'll notice a few gaps that might shift the template if people are watching. Let's just put it that way. I won't say anymore.
You mentioned about Solon. He was really impactful, especially off the bench. It felt like every time he came off the bench, he scored a goal. But he, I believe, now has gone on a free transfer to Spurs. But you're right as well in the sense of they've retained. It's like the back line, the goalkeeper, exactly the same. Midfield, exactly the same. Like there's no big ins and outs. And this team finished 10th last season. So you're looking literally at a top 10 side. It's just whether or not we think that they can sustain that or potentially push on. It's still early. There could still be a couple of signings coming their way. I've not heard a lot about Fulham. They just seem to be ticking. Like I said, at the start of the strengths part, the mid-table for everything. They're quiet, getting on with what they need to do. Really under the radar. So let's have a look at some weaknesses. So despite being mid-table for most things, they do allow the most big chances and third for shots on target. So something that is great, we've talked about Leno being second for saves and being one of the better goalkeepers for FPL points, but it is a little bit worrying. And I did say when I talked about the defense, it is the same. They are used to each other, but I think that their weakness is their defense, and it does show in just how many big they're the worst for big chances and third for shots on target. So perhaps the amount of clean sheets and goals conceded could get worse. If you talked about them overperforming, we could see those big chances and shots on target, more of those going in. So for me, that does tell me that the defense is massively an avoid, but goalkeeper Leno could still be a great pick at 4.5 million because he's going to have his goal peppered pretty often by a lot of sides. Any weaknesses that you would like to point out about this Fulham side?
At the time of this recording of this video, I think I've seen in a poll that about only 18% of teams have Salah in their drafts, which means everyone's gone for a big 5 midfield. Cheapest midfielder would be 6.5 million Mitoma, if not 6.5 million midfielder Mbomo. I cannot imagine a Fulham player competing with a midfield of like Foden, Bruno, Saka,
Rashford, Son,
Martinelli,
Odegaard,
Mitoma. Yeah, there's just no point. There's just no point. That's the first glaring weakness. Like in terms of their team strategy, I do have concerns that it will be found out because Marco Silva's strategies aren't exactly mind-blowing. They're not groundbreaking, really. They just do the simple things right. Did they make it to Europe? No, right? I don't think they made it to Europe. So they will definitely recycle the same strengths and weaknesses. And that means that the likes of Robinson and Bobby Reed and Harrison Reed in midfield will all have their same weaknesses. I've covered multiple times in my podcast last season that Harrison Reed has issues managing space. When opponents overload his space, Robinson on the left bombs way too far forward and he doesn't produce enough attacking output to justify his advances. There are these unresolved issues that have been sort of swept under the rug, covered by the attacking outputs of Solomon and Mitrovic and whatnot. So I do feel that Fulham are a team, just like Crystal Palace, who have taken their chances in the crucial moments of the season. They've won at the right time and they've basically coasted to their mid-table finish. And I suspect that they will not build on the current squad that they have because most of them I don't see improving, kicking on and being better players.
And something that points out, again, just feels like I'm sticking the boot in on the defense here, but none of the defenders scored over 100 points. It wasn't a great year for defenders in general, but when you're looking at defenders, that Robertson's got 35 starts out of 38, Reams got 33, Tete 29, Tosin 23. So I'll forgive sort of the lower, below 30, but if my defender is starting over 30 games a season and they can't break 100 points, it's just another example of sort of steering clear. You've got the goalkeeper on 142 points and the entire defense under 100. That just rings alarm bells to tell me that goalkeeper is doing the job at the back. He's making saves, but he's having maybe what if there's no connection of like the goalkeeper's so high, the defense is so low. That worries me. Not if you're a Leno owner, because you're probably banking on save points ticking over, getting 3s and 4s, rather than hoping for clean sheets like Edison getting 6 points a week, right?
You're a Leno owner last season?
I think I was after the wild card, or the second wild card. No, sorry, the third wild card if we include the World Cup one, right? The last wild card. Yeah, and you're completely right about midfield. They're cheap for 10th place Premier League side, but midfield, they're not going to compete. Most of us have got 5-man midfields, right? They can't get into that. Mitrovic could, if he stays, he could argue for that second place next to Haaland. It's possible, but you can go up 0.5 million and you can pick up European strikers like Jesus or Watkins, right? You're looking at sort of top 7, top 6 teams for 8 million, or you can go down to like a Ferguson at Brighton, right? So it just feels as though you're not going to sort of touch the defenders because they can't get 100 points. You're not going to touch the midfielders because the competition for midfield is so strong. And you can argue to go slightly up or slightly down for Mitrovic as a striker. But you are getting a talisman, but he might not be on penalties now because of how many he missed last season. So for me, it's just sort of the goalkeeper. So we can go on to players that we have picked out. So the first one for me is Leno. We've already talked about him, so I'm not going to repeat. Just the fact that 4.5 million, second for saves. They concede the third most amount of shots, most big chances. He's one of the best goal scoring keepers in the game. Second, Andreas, the 4.5 million legend. He's now 5.5 million, but he's still on all the set pieces. I still think he has value at 5.5 million. So if you for some reason if you want Salah and you need someone under 6 million, I think Pereira is one of the stronger options in the lower price category for that. And then Mitrovic is my third one because he's the talisman. He could still be on penalties. They will start him. Even when he is injured, they still want to start him. Pretty simple top 3 for me. Not a whole lot into that one. So do you want to talk about your 3 picks for this side?
My 3 had Solomon in there. I made this before his free transfer to Spurs. I wholeheartedly agree with Leno, but I reverse the order. I'd have Pereira first, simply because you want that stability. I think even picking between the 5.5 million midfielders is already very, very difficult. So Pereira is definitely up there as a top 3. People won't mention it until they actually start shopping for 5.5 million midfielders.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, with Leno, I need to comment a little bit because I was an owner of Leno since the World Cup. And this was 100% based on the eye test. I had no idea what his points returns would be like. The thing about Leno is that he reminds you of De Gea in his prime. When De Gea was making saves left and right, he wasn't just making the glamour saves. He was making all these big saves where He opened up his body in this futsal five-a-side style kind of spread where he like kneeled down and he used his back knee to cover the gaps between his legs. Leno's doing that fantastically, exactly the way De Gea did it in his prime. And I do believe that it is that particular style that has enabled him to make all these big saves, because Fulham's fullbacks bomb very, very high up. And that's why they're conceding so many big chances. I have to comment on the nature of Leno's points, because unlike David Raya, who concedes 2 goals or 3, and then he would make 12 saves, right? That's how he would get his 9 points. Leno is the complete opposite. He would get 2 points against City, 2 points against Arsenal, but he would nail 11 at home to that promotion side. That's how Fulham do. I like Leno in that sense because I don't feel insecure despite him having a bad fixture. The thing about goalkeepers is that you don't expect them to come up with points every week. I think that's unrealistic. Even if most content creators say, oh, use these rotations and you'll guarantee points every week, I do not believe the advantage is significant for goalkeepers. A set and forget strategy is probably the best way to go so that you settle your heart, because picking rotations this season, at least this decade, I find, because is such a difficult task because we have so many good attacking teams backed up by so many good managers who have European continental experience, and we just cannot underrate. We cannot look down on all these promoted sides anymore. So that's why I love Bern Leno so much. Just love seeing that 11. I don't like having David Raya and then I just see him. Oh, he's conceded in the first minute, and then it's like, oh, 3 saves. Oh, 5 saves. Oh, 8 saves. Oh my goodness, what's happening to this man? I cannot. My heart cannot take it. I'd rather just have the clean 1-0, 6 saves, bonus. Whew, I'll take my 11 and go.
And your choice, you've got Mitrovic in here as well. It's
not worth a mention. Not right now. I can't even believe he's my third pick. I don't have a third pick.
It's clear. You already said it earlier that the choices for this side are pretty clear cut, right? So it's nice and easy. So traps, again, I'm just to gloss over what I've already said. For me, it's the whole defense. Not particularly attacking fullbacks. You can argue Robertson and Tete do get forward quite a bit, but that exposes them defensively. No particularly great aerial threat, so it's not like they've got, like a 6'5" defender threat from set pieces, and they all scored under 100 points. So for me, it's just the defense, not the goalkeeper. Leno, of course, we've established is a great option, but the entire defense is one for me. Stay away. I'd take a punt anywhere else in this side. I wouldn't be touching the defense. Any traps or things you would suggest to avoid about Fulham?
That isn't Palhinha. I think Palhinha was a Wolves target, and I cannot believe we let him go. He was swiped from under our noses last season, and boy, do we need someone like that. Yeah, Palhinha is just an all-action midfielder that every side needs to survive in the Prem, which is why I don't get why people don't like Sofian Amrabat, all the Man United fans and all that. I do feel that that engine room is just so precious for Fulham, and we're just looking for something that works. The problem with Fulham is that they are literally trying everything to see what sticks, and it's just fortunate enough that last season they had 3 players that shone. I don't think they will stop. I think Harrison Reed will continue making his bombs forward into the box late in the game. I do believe that they will sub off one of the midfielders or the fullbacks for Tom Kearney, who I believe is a much better crosser of the ball. I do believe that Jack Robinson will continue to bomb down the byline. All these things, right, they require us to believe that past points do not equal to future points. That's the sad thing to say. And I only label the fullbacks as traps for now because based on the eye test, they just do not have an aerial target to thrive on crosses. There's just no system. There's no fox in the box. As much as we all love Mitrovic is not a fox in the box. He's not a Jamie Vardy. Neither is he Cristiano Ronaldo. Fulham get into great positions, but what they do with those promising positions and just hasn't happened yet. Which is why they are traps for now. But I am of the opinion that someone from this starting 11 will be dropped, and that will probably make Joao Palhinha shine. That I'm reserving that opinion for now.
I just want to correct myself because I know I'm a Bolton Wanderers fan, and Tim Ream used to play for Bolton, so I know he's shorter than I am. He's like 6'1". I think he's 6'1", and I just said like there's no big aerial aerial threat, no big 6'5" man. But Tosin, because I thought, hold on, no, he is pretty big. He is 6'5", but he started 23 games, but he scored one. I don't know why. I just think that's a bit of a waste or something. He's 6'5", and he's not dominating. Like the fact that we're sat here thinking, yeah, they don't seem that much of a threat from set pieces, apart from Mitrovic, who's great in the air. But they've got a 6'5" centre half, and he's just not done anything. Just think it's so strange. That's it for weaknesses. Any final points you want to say about Fulham? I've given him a 5 out of 10.
Or given the climate of the current template, I'd rate them lower, unless they do something to their lineup, their starting lineup.
4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Middle for all the stats. Middle of the road for their score. Pretty clear who the choices are from this side, and it's pretty much the same size as last season, so it's quite nice and tidy team to select really there. So thank you very much for joining us today. Next one will of course be a huge one because it is Liverpool. Will they be back or will they be struggling? We say struggling, but they still finished like 5th, right? But are they going to be back chasing the title? Find out next time. Thanks for joining us, and as always, have a good one.